The Sturge-Weber Foundation began in 1987 when my daughter was born. We actually started the foundation before she had seizures because we knew that there were other people out there hurting and needing some support along the way too. And then we also went on to do research and advocacy, which we felt were very key to getting more answers. You know what's interesting about being told cluster seizures or partial complex or whatever all the terminology is? When your child is first diagnosed, especially when they're an infant or a young toddler, that terminology just kind of goes out the window. You don't care what it's called, just stop it. When my daughter first had her seizures, we knew that they would come. She was diagnosed at birth with glaucoma, and she had 3 eye surgeries in the first 3 months. And then we knew, because she had the Sturge-Weber diagnosis, the seizures would come. So we lived for a year in fear, basically. You know, in hope, but fear. And when they finally came, interestingly enough, I was meeting with a medical advisor to discuss making a brochure for the foundation, and I came back from lunch and she was throwing up all afternoon, the care provider told me. And I didn't think anything about it because nobody ever told me they could throw up with a seizure. Around 10 o'clock at night, her eyeballs rolled to the side of her head and she was in la la land, and you know, your gut and your heart tell you. So we ran to the emergency room, and she was in there for a week, and the seizures just kept coming and coming and coming, and they'd up the meds and they kept coming, and it took them a week before they could finally get them under control. Then they came back again about 6 months later, and we had to do the whole routine again, and then she was controlled for a little bit, and then they came back another 6 months later, and I think we were only in the hospital maybe 3 days that time. But they would just kind of come out of the blue, and it takes over your life. I think it's just very important to have a battle plan in place, because whether you like it or not, you're going into battle. You can be a pacifist or an activist, whatever suits your fancy, but you still have to address the issue that this is one of my troops and I need to take care of them. And then when it comes time that the seizures are there, we've prepared them, and ahead of time is to have a plan in place. Do you call your doctor? Do you go to the emergency room? What plan do you have in place so that when they do come, it's not a big surprise? And then we also counsel them to work closely with their physician, depending on the type of seizures that they have, as to what medications will be optimal to help them. Some of the options that we tried, there was relief. There were respite years that were good. As far as the seizure activity went, I think with Sturge-Weber, it's unique in a sense, but then it's also more of a challenge. You need to have the right medication that addresses the whole chemical background and vascular and blood flow issues that are related with that. So in Kaylin's case, she was fairly well controlled, and then kind of was off medication for a while, which can happen. And then as the hormones kicked in, there were a host of other issues, and we had to search for some more options. But when the seizures would hit, they would just bam, 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 and you were in the hospital for a week at a time trying to get them under control. My reaction always is, yes, please. For participating in clinical trial, like I said, we rely on our medical advisors to look over the trial and make sure that it's been laid out appropriately. And then that gives the parents the assurance that it's also something that's good to participate in. What we're doing now is teaching parents and their caregivers how to be an informed consumer. We teach them what the clinical trial phases are, why they're important, how they can participate, how to safeguard their, health issues and data so that it's not being misused.